When Micah broke, I was back from the when the Micah news broke. I was coming back from the airport, and I looked at my phone, and I'm like, what? I had like my jaw just fully like locked for 5 minutes. I just didn't know what to. It didn't feel real because when a player is that as good as Micah Parsons, and as premium position as edge rusher is, it's kind of unbelievable to think he'd even ever be on the market, right? Because Micah gives like you have to double Micah. Everything in your game plan surrounds Micah. The new job of a defensive coordinator is for any team that's playing the Packers is where's number 11. You have to find number 11 because he's going to just destroy your team if you don't. It's kind of like this might be a bit much, but he has that Aaron Donald effect where it's like the focus of the other team is now okay. How do we deal with Micah, and where do we go from there? And I know he hasn't had like the greatest postseason success, but it's still Micah Parsons. Like his ability to get pressure on the quarterback is pretty just unreal. And for a team like the Packers, who really just needed like that one stud, because if you looked at the Packers, it was a team full of really good players, right? They had Jordan Love, who I think is a talented quarterback. They have a pretty okayish receiving core. I think Matthew Golden's also pretty talented. They have solid offensive linemen. They have solid D linemen. An unbelievable safety. I'll give them that. But they didn't have like that one major star on that team. And if you look at like something like the last 10 Super Bowls, all of those teams had at least one major star on the edge, right? Or on the defensive line. You have, that whole Eagles defensive line with, but in particular, if I'm going to highlight one, like Jalen Carter and Mel Williams were unbelievable on the inside. If you go back a couple years, you have, of course, Chris Jones for Kansas City. If you go back before that, you have Aaron Donald and Von Miller on the same team, which, by the way, is absurd. I don't understand how that happened. If you go to Tampa, you have Vita Vea. Again, you have the Chiefs with Chris Jones, and then you get to Super Bowl 53, and that's like the first time where they didn't have a true superstar edge rusher. But if you look at all those teams, they just have one complete game wrecker on the defensive line. And now the Packers got that. And for the Packers, this is a move that really just pushes them into Super Bowl contention. Even though I am not fully sold on Jordan Love, of course, I'm a Niners fan. So the few experiences I've had with Jordan Love are him throwing a game-losing interception in the playoffs. But outside of that, like he's shown a lot of signs of progression. Even though he had a bit of a slump last year, Jordan Love has all the physical tools in the world. He's now adding a new wide receiver one with Matthew Golden, and that defense just looks unbelievable. They were the number 6 defense last year with a lot of holes, right? And now that they do have an issue, of course, with cornerback depth, but their edge game is going to be really good. Now, of course, you have Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, and Edrin Cooper all in the same edge rushing unit. That's pretty unbelievable. I don't know how they're going to be able to support that over the next few years and, cap wise, but at least for this year, that's really good. And it probably gives them the best edge rushers in the NFC North, even better than the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson, just because of how deep that room is. They do have a bit of an issue now at defense tackle because they traded Kenny Clark, but I think that's their edge rushers more than make up for it. But that defense is probably going to go to at least a top 3 unit just because of how much talent is there now with Micah, Xavier McKinney, those edge rushers I mentioned, and a really solid linebacking core. I also want to talk about the contract. So Micah is making $47 million per year, which I'm going to pull this up on Sport Track. If I remember correctly, his the way he distributed the contract was really interesting. So, yeah, if we get to here, he has a $9 million cap at this year, so he's going to cost him basically nothing on the books. He's going to make $20 million the next year, $30 the another year, and then he has $64 million and $70 million with 2 more void years after that. So for 3 years, they're getting Micah Parsons at a giant discount. So it's effectively the Packers pushing in all of their chips and going all in for the next few years. So it does say a lot about Jordan Love and their view and their perspective on Jordan Love, that they're now paying him and Micah around $100 million a year per year, right? And it's saying that they do believe that they have the team right now. They're pushing all their chips in. So do I think that they're there yet? Not yet. Just a little bit. I think they need one more year. I think they need one more year to sort of get their ass kicked in the divisional round by some really good team in the NFC, maybe the Eagles again. But they need a little more experience because that defense is still really young. And I know they had a big sort of surprising playoff push 2 years ago, destroyed the Cowboys, lost the Niners. And then this year, their whole team just did not look ready against Philadelphia, especially Jordan Love. Really, really rough game out of him. But I think they could use one more year, especially marinating. I think they need to add a little bit of more help on on the DT's line and with wide receivers. Uh, but they very clearly have a path to something. Which I think before, when you looked at Green Bay prior to the Micah trade, it was like, we have a solid quarterback, but we really need him to be the next Aaron Rodgers if we want to have any shot at this in the next few years. Now they don't need him to be, which because that defense should be again one of the best defenses in football. So I think that's kind of interesting the way they're running that. Let's go to the Cowboys side of it, and I don't I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said when it comes to Dallas, because not only yes, could you have gone him at $35 million a year last year, and now you're paying him, or now he's getting paid $47 million by Green Bay. Not only did you trade probably the second best edge rusher in football, you did it for 2 first-round picks. Not like, when I saw the trade go down, I'm like, okay, the trade was Sean Gary and 2 firsts. That was a player. Or, they got Lucas Van Ness, or somehow they got Xavier McKinney. Just, I'm like, okay, something absurd Green Bay gave. And then when I saw his 2 firsts and Kenny Clark, and I'm like, oh, that's it? Because those picks are coming from the late 20s to early 30s, 100%. There's no way Green Bay, who had the 23rd pick? I have no idea what their pick was. But a pick in the early 20s last year, and then 2 years ago made its divisional round, so they had a bottom 8 pick, are now going to all of a sudden be bad and give you a good pick. So they're shooting at the bottom of the draft, where the Cowboys have struggled because, a couple years ago they drafted Mozzie Smith, not the greatest pick there, and now they have to try and go find talent at the bottom to go replace Micah Parsons, which is never going to happen. Like Jerry had the quote where it's, oh, we can draft Pro Bowl players with these first-round picks. Well, who did you give up to get them? You gave up an all-pro. It's the Simpson meme all over again. It's like, oh, let's look in what could be in the mystery box. We could get a boat. You tell me we could have a boat or a mystery box that could have a boat? Let's take the box. Like, no, that's not how you build a team. And I think even if Micah came in there and said, right at the end of it, Green Bay's giving me 47. If you give me 47, I'll stay. You still have to take it. Even though I think that's a bit much to pay for a defensive player, you still kind of just have to, because it's Micah Parsons. Right? Because we saw there was a really good stat floating around on the show called First Things First, one of my favorite, one of the good national media shows. But they were showing a statistic. It's like with Micah Parsons on the field, Dallas's defense is the best in football ever since he's been around. And with Micah Parsons off the field, they are the single worst defense in all of football by EPA, which is a pretty big testament as to what the impact he has. So giving up a guy like that, so effectively punting on this year, because a team of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and hopes and prayers is not winning you a Super Bowl. And then realistically punting the next few years when you already have Dak on this giant contract. You paid CD. You just paid Deron Bland and Trevon Diggs for some reason. And it's like, okay, well, what's the plan? Because when the move first happened, I'm like, okay, so Dallas is calling it quits. But then they extended they extended Deron Bland. So I don't understand their idea. It's like they're dreaming of a 98 Super Bowl. They want to be the Steelers. They want to be a wild card team every year. Because that's kind of their ceiling, right? If Dak goes out there and wins an MVP, throws up for 5,500 yards, they're still winning 9 games. There's no path where Dallas can go win 10, 11 games now. So they just dream of a 98 Super Bowl. I know the way the Cowboys run is different than most teams run it, because Jerry runs it as a business. He's trying to get as many eyes on it as possible. He's not looking for necessarily the best move. But even then, a guy like Micah Parsons sells you tickets. The fans will come into the stadium. They're all buying number 11 jerseys. They're not coming to watch Kenny Clark, right? And speaking of Kenny Clark, he's a really good football player, but he is one who is on the decline. He had by far his worst year last year. He kind of struggled against the run, which the Cowboys are bringing him in to supposedly to stop the run. And to top it all off, you get a date with the Eagles to start the year. You are going in front of 50 million people to play Philly. And realistically, you'll lose by 3 scores, because you have no plan to stop Saquon, you have no plan to stop Jalen Hurts, and your offense with just CeeDee Lamb is not moving the ball against that Eagles defense. So, yeah, now what? I just think the Cowboys are a team that is completely loss of direction. And when that happens in football, you mostly just get stuck in mediocrity, which is the one place you do not want to be. It's the same place the Saints were for a while, right, when they were in cap hell, and there's just no getting out of it. Like, what do you do now? Because there's only one team right now that's built like Dallas, and that's Cincinnati. And while everyone thinks Cincinnati is a really fun team, they're not going to win the Super Bowl because they don't have a defense, right? Joe Burrow could, same thing. Joe Burrow could throw for 5,500 yards. Best Cincinnati's winning is 10 games. So I don't understand the plan, right? And I guess what happens when your owner is so old, he physically cannot have a plan because his brain cannot make that many coherent thoughts together. It purely seems like it was an ego play. It was, okay, you want to insult me. You don't want to take the handshake deal that we agreed upon. Screw you. I'm trading you. And I am the owner, I am the GM, and I am the president. So which means I can do it, and I don't have to think about it.